Welcome to Across Africa, France 24's weekly roundup from across the continent. Coming up this week, the UN's documented hundreds of cases of rape and sexual abuse in South Sudan. Many of the women making the claims against government and opposition soldiers say that they were attacked just outside of the United Nations camp in Juba. Also, Kenya jumps at the chance to build economic bridges with Tehran as opportunities in Iran grow in the wake of the easing of trade sanctions. And snails are a delicacy in Ivory Coast. Given their size, they're more of a main dish than a starter. France 24 and Across Africa sample a sizer. Well, first, on Thursday, the UN's human rights chief said officials have documented over 200 cases of alleged sexual violence against civilians committed during fighting between government and opposition forces in South Sudan in July. Many women say that they were raped just outside of the UN's Protections of Civilians site, where tens of thousands of people displaced in the country's civil war have sheltered. Simona Foltin reports.
For these women, a trip to the market means risking their lives. Over 200 have been raped in the past weeks, some killed, just outside this United Nations camp for displaced in Juba. A survivor shows her scars from an attack on July 18th. She says 5 soldiers from the SPLA, the National Army, raped her in broad daylight.
The soldiers gave me 2 options. Either I could choose the one who would rape me, or they all would. I asked them to kill me instead.
When the soldiers caught her, she was just a few meters away from the UN gate.
This is where they caught me. Then they dragged me over to the side of the road, leading towards the checkpoint. This is where they raped me.
This is the spot where one of the victims said she was captured by soldiers, dragged away and raped. The peacekeepers are just a few meters away, but she said they did nothing to stop it. Most of the rape victims are Nuer, the tribe of recently deposed First Vice President Riek Machar. They believe they are being targeted based on their ethnicity. But even though it's not safe to leave the camp, hunger has left them with no other choice.
There's no food here. That's why we're forced to go outside. But when we go out, the soldiers attack us. They take all of our food and rape the young women.
The UN says it has protected civilians to the best of its ability and has pledged to increase patrolling outside its bases.
We did have some restrictions for a day or so. We were going as far as we possibly can. But I can tell you, both around the POC site and inside the compound, there was still a robust level of patrolling going on.
Many here no longer believe the UN can protect them. But as long as South Sudan continues to slip back into civil war, they simply have nowhere else to go.
Since the US began easing decades-long trade sanctions on Iran, the country started to make economic inroads into Africa. Kenyans have been quick to target Tehran with its exports. Duncan Woodside tells us more.
Mombassa's weekly tea auction. Over $1 billion of the commodity is sold here each year.
Jeff, how many you want? 82.
Most of Kenya's tea ends up in Pakistan and Egypt. But there's a new player on the scene, Iran. Kamau exports exclusively to this Middle Eastern nation. He expects to ship $10 million of tea this year.
My uptake is significantly improved from when I started, and every day we are having new customers coming on board.
America's easing of sanctions on Iran has given Kamau his opportunity. He knows the Iranian market well.
Strong taste. The stronger the taste, the more flavor, the more aroma in the tea, the better it is for them.
The sanctions restricted Iran's trade with countries in America's sphere of influence. Transactions and products can now be routed directly through Iran.
During the sanctions, we had a problem and difficulty, but after the sanction, the banking cooperation could be established. The transferring money has no risk and with less cost.
This residential development, 5 apartments, each with 5 bedrooms, has just come to market in the capital, Nairobi, built by an Iranian firm, which views Kenya as an easy place to operate.
When you're going after permission, going after a certificate for construction even, they will compromise good, and they like to run things fast.
Iran sees big opportunities in engineering and petrochemicals in Kenya, but China remains the dominant player here, accounting for over 30% of Kenya's imports last year.
Some refugees in South Africa say that they feel authorities are stalling in dealing with their applications. They're growing concerns that the hold-ups are down to a deliberate policy shift to make it more difficult for foreigners hoping to stay.
Congolese living in South Africa are gathering here to deliver a memorandum to the United Nations office in Pretoria to get their message across.
So this is your copy?
Thank you.
Yes.
They're protesting against what they call the abuse of their fellow immigrants in South Africa. They say refugee status and residence permits are becoming more and more difficult to obtain.
Most of our applications as Congolese citizens take 4 or 5 years, where, according to the law, they should only take 8 months. We told them before, tensions are rising among our community.
These foreigners have taken their plight to the streets because they are seriously worried about their future. What makes it harder is a Home Affairs directive in February stipulating that refugees are no longer entitled to work permits.
Apart from that, we are asking that all of us who studied here should be given permanent residence so that they can find some work.
The Congolese are not the only ones feeling the change in attitude from immigration officers. All asylum seekers are now subject to stricter rules. Authorities say that 80% of asylum seekers are economic migrants and not political refugees. Security criteria has also been reinforced.
Home Affairs was not in what we call the security cluster of ministries, where your police and your defense are situated. Now they have been moved into the security cluster, and there is now an emphasis on a risk-based approach to immigration. But also, now the Department of Home Affairs requires that you produce a police clearance from both your country of origin and every country you've lived in since your 18th birthday. And this just goes to show that they want to know who are we really letting into the country.
Since democracy, South Africa has opened its borders to just about everybody. But with the growing threat of terrorism, they've been forced to become more selective.
Out with the old is proving to be a bit of a headache for transport chiefs in Yaoundé, hoping to clean up the act of taxi drivers. A deadline for old bangers to be shaped up or shipped out has come and gone. But many Cameroonians who make a living behind the wheel say that they can't afford to pimp their rides just for appearance's sake.
Roaring into action, a cloud of toxic smoke erupts out of its old taxi's engine. One of 12,000 decrepit cars driving around Yaoundé with a July deadline to smarten up its act or be taken off the road. Yet Guy, a taxi driver, has no intention of abandoning his 20-year-old motor.
I'm a father of 6 children, and it's with my taxi that I raise them. I earn 1,000 CFA francs a day.
Rusting bodywork, boots overflowing with scrap metal and sugarcane. Authorities are keen to make over Yaoundé streets by ditching rundown runabouts ahead of a Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament due to be held here in November. But in a city without public transportation, it's difficult to escape old taxis.
When there are no other options, you take the taxi that's available, even when it's in this pitiful state.
Many of the capital's streets are riddled with potholes. For those in Cameroon's taxi union, the priority should be repairing the roads.
The roads of Yaoundé don't allow us to clean our cars, because you need to clean your cars at least 3 times a day to be able to drive on these roads. Look at the state of the roads. When it rains, it's impossible to drive here. Today we are lucky. It has not rained for 1 week, because when it rains here, there are floods.
For those who have invested in keeping up appearances, the rewards go beyond the cosmetic. This driver says dressing the part helps his business.
The taxi is my office, so I need to keep it clean, and it makes me happy to know that customers are happy to sit in the car.
Yaoundé's transport bosses hope that chauffeurs like Constant will steer taxis to change for the better.
And finally, a plat du jour of escargot, but not the French kind. These snails are gigantic, weighing up to 1 kilo each. In Ivory Coast, they're a delicacy, and snail lovers travel from far and wide to get a taste, as did our correspondents.
A maze of alleyways makes up the market. It's easy to get lost, but Yvette knows what she's after, the finest snails in the city.
These are the best snails at Felicity's place because she doesn't sell farm snails. She sells snails that come from the countryside and forests. They are delicious.
They're impressive, weighing on average around 400 grams. Giant, slimy mollusks full of therapeutic properties. The shells, they say, can heal wounds and soothe stomach pains.
I have an ulcer, so I take them often. See the blue juice?
Is it good?
Yes, it is.
Yvette buys at least 5 kilos a day, 15 at the weekends because of higher demand. But to really enjoy them, it's better to know how they're prepared.
The snails are very dirty. They need to be washed well.
When night falls, the streets come alive. The snails are about to be cooked. The dish, with onions, tomatoes, peppers and fish, is Yvette's speciality. For 30 years, people have come far and wide to taste it.
There are big celebrities who come to eat here. Artists, actors. Everyone comes to eat here.
After 30 minutes, the snails are finally ready.
They have a special flavor that's just to my taste. I love them. If I have to choose from what they have on the menu, it's the snails that I'll take first.
Raw, fried, stewed or cooked, the snails are eaten and loved in every way.
Well, that's it for Across Africa this week. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.